I mean, first off, when you walk in, you see our tree on fire.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. Merry Christmas.
Shannon Bream, can you imagine that? Shannon Bream covering our Christmas tree in New York City on fire live in her air. And it looked like an inferno because you saw the size of that tree, right?
Yeah.
They're taking it apart now. And, on television, not running from it. I talked to Mike, who tackled the assailant this morning. And I said, he put up a fight. He goes, once I got him to the ground, he didn't put up a fight. But evidently they know him. Here's Dermot Shea talking about the guy that's under arrest will be arraigned today.
Well, the motive, I don't think, is clear at this point. It's an individual that's known to us. He has a series of low-level arrests, some drug arrests. He was issued earlier this year, some appearance tickets and didn't come back to court, which unfortunately is something we see all too often. He also has some low-level arrests in out of state. I believe it's Texas.
Mm-hmm. Great. So that system works really well, right?
Yeah.
No, I think it's pathetic. I think it's pathetic that we cannot keep people who already have offenses in custody. I think it's pathetic that we don't have the police presence that we used to have because of I think we have defunded the police. Now, it may not be in the sort of official way of cutting the budgets, but the police are smaller. They're diminished in their ability to protect the city, this city, all the great cities across the country, because they've been demoralized, they've retired, they've left. It's been a brutal, brutal year and a half for them since George Floyd's murder. So we have defunded them in every way that matters. That's what we've done. Then we wouldn't let them come back if they weren't vaccinated. So we have, in every possible way, in these cities, which are Democrat-led, we have used every ounce of our strength to create situations like what we saw last night out here on the plaza, what we've seen in LA with the horrific robberies. We've seen carjackings accelerating. I'm sorry, I can't talk. I drank too much coffee about 5 minutes ago. But it's so sad to me. It's absolutely heartbreaking that we've allowed this to happen. And it's really no surprise.
And it's correctable. It's going to be hard. So turning a tanker, but tankers do turn. And I think it could start with a cascade of elections. They sent a big message on the Board of Education when the parents stood up and they have to continue to speak up about the curriculum. Now you got to have a bunch of cities stand up and the city residents and say this is not okay. And Eric Adams could lead a charge. What an opportunity he has to replace the worst mayor, the laziest person with the worst instincts, who is at war with the governor, and we all pay the price here. I mean, I know you don't live in New York, but you work here, and you see how we paid the price.
We basically live in New York, all of us, right?
Yeah.
20 plus years of spending every single day in this city, and we love New York. That's why we stay here. But you're right. Eric Adams has an enormous opportunity to bring this city together and to say things that are absolutely unifying, which is we want to live in a safe city. He has said that. He needs to put his actions behind that and show that he means it. He needs to empower the police, of which he was part of the force. He needs to tell them we have your back so that the police don't turn their back on him at funerals like they did to Bill de Blasio. This is a potential huge turning point. Everybody wants the same things in this city and every city across the country. You want to be able to walk down the street. You don't want to see the kind of things that I'm looking at on the screen right now. How embarrassingly pathetic is it to break windows in a store and run out with your arms full of stuff? How does anybody do that with their head held high?
Well, we just heard somebody admit to shoplifting, how easy it was.
Oh, yeah.
And then we did, and this is organized. And there's people waiting. There's organized crime waiting to resell this stuff. And this is what's astounding. And this is what heartens me. So Democrats are beginning to push back, because it's the right thing to do, for their own political future. So AOC says this, cut 16.
We have to talk about the specifics because, for example, we're actually seeing a lot of these allegations of organized retail theft are not actually panning out. I believe it's a Walgreens in California cited it, but the data didn't back it up. So.
I mean, seriously, what is she talking about? Does she not have eyes to see what is going on across this country? When Oprah Winfrey comes out and says, enough is enough, the world is upside down. And she spoke out because she was so upset about the murder that happened in Beverly Hills of this lovely 81-year-old woman who was a friend of hers. But people say, oh, well, once it starts to touch people like that and it happens to people that they know, then they get incensed. Well, you know what? If that's where we're at, then I think That's fine. We need action. We need people to start changing the way they talk about this situation, and ignoring it and closing your eyes to it and pretending it's not happening like AOC is doing. It is just simply not going to fly. People know what's happening.
Jackie Heinrich asked the question at Jen Psaki, I'm not going to play it, and about AOC, and she said, we don't agree. We have seen some extremely disturbing videos showing retail theft. State and local leaders and Governor Gavin Newsom have identified this as a serious concern. They're trying to separate it. Sometimes they ask reporters to ask that question. I wouldn't be surprised if that was it. But it comes down to these district attorneys that run for election in Philadelphia. We saw it in Waukesha. We find out this guy calls himself the father of these left-wing elected officials. What about the DA in San Francisco? What about the one that's going to be recalled in Los Angeles, Gascon? Hopefully they'll be successful. But listen to Larry Krasner, not even acknowledging in Philadelphia that crime is up. Cut 20.
I think it's important that we don't let this become mushy and bleed into the notion that there's some kind of a big spike in crime. There isn't. There is not a big spike in crime. That is not true. There is also not a big spike in violent crime. Neither one of these things is true. Basically, we don't have a crisis of lawlessness. We don't have a crisis of crime. We don't have a crisis of violence.
So by the way, Larry Krasner says that, and Michael Nutter, a left-wing mayor, former mayor of Philadelphia, says he owes an apology to 521 families of Philly's homicide victims, and she went on to go into detail. And he called it a degree. He said it takes a certain audacity of ignorance and white privilege. Here we go, to say that right now. But the ultra left wing do feel as though they know how to take care of minorities, and the problem is the cops.
Well, the problem that you have
to them, not to me.
I mean, so what you have is people leaving these communities, minority families leaving these communities, leaving the inner city, leaving some of these blocks half empty. The stores are being abandoned. So that is a trend that we've seen over the last several years. So what happens is people that the largest number of victims in all of these situations are people who live in these middle to lower class communities across the big cities in this country. So, to say that this is an upper white problem, or, to couch it that way is just absolutely inaccurate. And there's over 1,000 homicides in Cook County and Chicago. So, I mean, and people who live in the majority of those communities, they want police on their streets. They want to be protected. They want to feel safe, just like everyone else does. And they don't want to abandon their cities. They don't want to abandon their blocks, but they're doing it. And you can't blame them for doing it.
This is why I think things are going to change, sadly, is because what you mentioned earlier. Beverly Hills is where we're seeing the crime and the murders. And now we saw Pacific Palisades, a Christmas party in a residential home get raided. The video that you were watching referring to was a follow home. A guy, and it seemed like a very nice house, so probably let's say upper middle class, gets followed home by two thugs. They break in the house with him. They do whatever they want, and they take all their stuff. So they get 48th and 6th, where they burn our Christmas tree to the ground. We're watching this guy he's got multiple offenses this year. I'm reading about this story this morning about this guy that beat up a guy, got out of jail, and just beat up two women again. The other day, beat him senseless. So you're seeing areas which were crime-free and getting extra attention. It is not crime-free anymore. And they're hitting the people with the money and the influence.
And you see it, those of us who grew up in this area or any big city across the country, it's starting to feel like the 70s again, right? And the carjackings. I mean, I remember the last wave of carjackings decades ago, and it was terrifying. People came up with all these ways to make sure that their cars couldn't get open while they're driving them. It's a terrifying trend, and the reason that it's happening is because it's so easy to get away with it. So why wouldn't you? So if your buddy just robbed, a Louis Vuitton down the street, and the next morning you see him, at breakfast getting coffee, you get it. You get it. There's no ramifications. There's no downside.
You're not the news director, but if you were, how do you not tell this story? I watched CNN do a story on Saturday afternoon, and they did this whole story about these smash and grabs, the looting, and they did it without bringing up Title 42. Mm-hmm. So you watch the shoplift. It's the foundation of all of this. It took a while to realize I could really steal $995 worth of stuff.
Yes.
How do you not do that? Just follow the line. You don't even have to have an opinion. You can't do the story without doing that. So how do you not put this on? How do you still run a network and talk about January 6th, 45 minutes of every hour.
I know. It's true. And, when you look at, you can sort of juggle some of the crime statistics if you want them to come out the way you want them to come out. But the bottom line is that homicides are up double digits in most major cities across the country. Double digits. So I don't know how you look at that and say, gee, this looks like a pretty rosy picture, like the mayor in Philadelphia. I think that, Americans are very smart. This is the reason that you see wrong direction numbers in the 63% area. Because people get it. They don't care what these politicians are telling them. They don't care what the mayors are saying to them. They understand their own experience. They understand the feeling that when they go out, you just feel a little less safe. You're watching your back all the time. And gosh, we had enough anxiety increase over the last year and a half that now you also have to worry that somebody might follow you up your doorstep when you're going home at night.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.